How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. Well, this subject that I'm talking about is not a big surprise. Many of us bloggers have been talking about it, and I said I want to do my part too, because I was doing some research today, and I found something on NPR that I'm going to play for y'all later. It's an audio. But first and foremost, I have an article that I want to read the royal family, and people are just absolutely done. And when Rona popped up and we had that, that lockdown statewide, people really got to have a time to do a lot of thinking because, you know, um, folks are literally dropping like flies. People are dying. And there was a lot of things to consider. And when it comes to the royal family, it ain't no big surprise how we have been treated like pure shit on jobs. And other folks, because there's other folks out here in this world, other races of folks are being quite candid on how they feel, how they're being treated on jobs. And Lisa, just the other day, she reported, how our folks just rather opt to work at home. They don't want to deal with all the isms. There's a lot of hatred in America. The foundation of America, the foundation ain't a good foundation at all. It's a lot of blood and sweat and force labor where we was not paid whatsoever. We built this country, and then when they had to pay us, they we get the shittiest jobs and get treated horrible. What we often say, the last hired and the first fired. This is not new whatsoever. But now this thing, literally, the research I have been doing, it is literally on a global scale. But I'm gonna first read about what's going on here in America. So let me get my other computer. And even, one thing I found out when I was doing my research, that even these articles that I read, they still ain't getting it. So what they are deeming this is the Great Resignation has taken many by surprise. Nearly 2/3 of U.S. workers are looking for a new job. But according to some HR and management studies, we probably could have predicted this would happen, right? Over decades, researchers have revealed turnover patterns that could explain why many are quitting in droves right now. Employers looking to stop the exodus should pay attention. Much of the on us is on them to give workers a better reason to stay. You need to pay people. They need to have excellent benefits, and the work environment should be positive. You will get more out of your worker. They want to pay you a little or nothing, just a little or nothing, and then on top of that, treat you shitty and just no positive reinforcement. That's coming from me. I'm not reading that. Y'all know that. Okay, research have shown that people tend to quit their jobs after experience a turnover shock, a life event, self-reflections about one's job satisfactions. Shock could be positive, like grad school acceptance or a new baby, or negative, like a divorce, sick relative, or they can be global, like Rona. All right, that upended every aspect of daily life. Yes, ain't never seen nothing like this ever in my lifetime. The universal nature of the pandemic is a major reason why so many are quitting at once. Most people didn't evaluate their job satisfaction. Every one of the three 365 days in a year, said Brooks Hampton, a professor of management and senior associates and dean at Georgetown University. These shocks usually happen for people, but with the pandemic, it happened in masses. Yeah, and it's being felt. So here we have virtually the entire workforce reassessing their feelings about work. To what degree will they quit? Historically, the availability of other jobs predicted how often people follow through. And right now, the U.S. has a record number of job openings. Between these, the widespread self-reflection, increased availability to work from anywhere, it's a perfect storm. Yes, it is. Colliding against employers. While the pandemic and subsequent shock were out of anyone's hands, there's a lot of employers could have done and still can do to keep employees from quitting, their jobs. A widespread study, turnover theory, proposed. Now, this is back in 2001, which is old as hell to me. Now, they did this widespread study by Hampton and two colleagues, and Terrence Mitchell and Thomas Lee, identified 6 factors that determine how much a person is embedded in their job and thus how likely they are to leave it. But y'all don't put down what would be the reason why in this article why folks would get up and leave. You did the study, but you didn't provide whatever you needed to provide, and you did that shit back in 2001, and we damn near in 2020. No, excuse me. We are in 2020. Tongue-tied. 2022. We're literally at that door. So that study is old and ancient, and they did not, I bet you in their study, they did not factor in a pandemic. But now employees opposed to employers have options. Now, remember I said my royal family, I said this recently, when they were giving out STEM checks, they were bailing out these big corporations and everything. And somewhere they must have had some mass meeting where they literally cut folks' pay in half. So like I said, opposed up here in the Bay Area making $30 an hour, 15, where somebody gonna have to work 2 jobs, and then you ain't spending no time with your family. And like my oldest daughter, she just recently went back to work, and I watched her go through the whole interview process and everything, and she was very frank and very demanding and very picky. And what ended up happening, she ended up the job that she was working from home when she was pregnant, her supervisor was putting back, to the best of her ability, the old team. And also my daughter was very adamant about what she know her worth. And I think she has about 14 years experience. She's an HR manager. And she told me that now she's working in the benefits part of it and everything like that. So I'm glad that she stuck to her guns. She's getting the pay that she actually deserve. So what inspired me also to do this video was I was listening to this 12-minute audio on NPR, how employers can win workers back and keep them after the Great Resignation. Okay, let's listen to what's really going on. I think. Got to read in between the lines.
Honestly, who among us has not thought about quitting our jobs? You know, the old joke about winning the lottery and getting to say, "So long, suckers." Thing is, actually willing yourself to take the plunge, well, that's a lot harder than you think.
I didn't even tell anybody. I sat in the parking lot and I tried to will myself to go in, and it wasn't happening.
All right, so imagine it's a Saturday morning this past June.
And I was sitting in the parking lot and I just decided I can't walk in there. I just cannot do it.
Mary Waters had pulled up in front of a grocery store where she worked in St. Louis, Missouri.
I couldn't walk into such a dehumanizing, toxic place where we're all sort of just like walking past each other, not even saying hi. The days would blur together.
Waters had spent her days stocking freezers for $10.25 an hour. But she says customers and management didn't treat her like a human being. And on top of all that, she had to work a full year before qualifying for health benefits.
That's not a great policy at any time, but especially in the middle of a public health emergency, to just let your employees come in without medical care. It made me feel like an absolute tool.
She drove out of the parking lot and she did not look back. And Waters isn't alone. A year and a half into the pandemic, the number of people in the U.S. quitting their jobs is still growing. And by now, you've probably heard this moment being called the Great Resignation.
The pandemic was sort of a nationwide awakening during a very stressful time.
This is Anthony Klotz. He's an organizational psychologist at Texas A&M University, where he's studying the phenomenon that he dubbed the Great Resignation. It refers to the tens of millions of Americans who have quit or changed jobs during the pandemic, 4.3 million of them in August alone. He studies the question, why?
Most people were reflecting on their lives at the same time that work was causing them burnout, or they were really enjoying working from home. I'm going to avoid using the term perfect storm, but it seemed like nothing like this had happened before.
Consider this. More and more workers in the U.S. are quitting their jobs, some without a plan B. And it's forcing employers to rethink what their employees really need. From NPR, I'm Audie Cornish. It's Friday, October 22nd. It's Consider This from NPR. In our last episode and this one, we're taking a deeper look at what's wrong with the global supply chain. Yesterday, we talked about systems, manufacturing, shipping, trucking that are slowing things down. At the end of the day, the supply chain is made up of people. So today, we're talking about why so many of them have left or changed jobs. Now, Professor Anthony Klotz, we just heard from him, says there are 4 reasons people are quitting in mass numbers.
There's a backlog of resignations. So because of the uncertainty during the pandemic, people who otherwise would have quit their jobs did not.
The second factor, burnout. Again, think back to Mary Waters.
Everybody's got their heads down trying to survive this thing.
Burnout is a predictor of turnover because one of the only cures from it is getting away from that which burns you out.
The third factor is what some have called the pandemic epiphany. People question their relationship with their jobs and realize they want something different.
During the pandemic, because there was a lot of death and illness and lockdowns, we really had the time and the motivation to sit back and say, do I like the trajectory of my life? Am I pursuing a life that brings me well-being?
The pandemic definitely led to some rethinking about priorities. You know, it makes you realize that there's more to life than work.
Callie Ebenstein spent 7 years working her way up to the position of production manager at a brewery in Athens, Georgia. She says she loved producing something that brought people joy, but
the thing that kept me up at night, the thing that woke me up in the middle of the night, was my job. I was in a position at the brewery where a lot of responsibility fell on my shoulders. And at times, the lack of institutional support made that job harder. And the balance between what I was getting out of the job and what the job was taking from me tipped very solidly in the direction of leading me to leave.
She quit at the end of July. Now, financially, she was able to stay home, be with her wife, take care of her garden and her chickens.
We got a half dozen hens a month ago that we're hoping to raise for egg production.
The ability to work from home, or the fact that employers were forced into a kind of flexibility, is another reason Klotz says a lot of people are quitting.
So you figure millions of Americans get to work from home, and as human beings, the need for autonomy is one of our fundamental human needs. And we don't tend to give it up once we're given some personal freedom. So I figured there'd be a number of people who would quit rather than go back to the office.
Even prior to the pandemic, I had already started considering making a change.
Tamara Mahmood worked as a physician's assistant for 12 years for a local hospital system.
Healthcare, I think, obvious to everybody, has been a system under a great deal of strain and pretty stressful job to have. Patient loads increase almost day by day, and our hiring capacity was never keeping up even prior to the pandemic.
But then Mahmood got sick in March of 2020. Difficulty breathing, she felt burning in her chest, and she wasn't able to access a COVID test. She recovered, but Mahmood has 3 children at home, and she not only worried about putting them at risk, she didn't even get to see them very much.
It's hard to be a woman in a workforce that's predominantly led by men and be faced with a global pandemic and think, like, do I want to continue to work for less pay, less recognition, less opportunities for advancement versus the well-being and safety of my family? Because as a mother, that was definitely something that was in the back of my mind.
Basically, better pay or even better benefits wouldn't have been worth all that she was sacrificing. So now she has switched jobs. She's a healthcare consultant, remote work, and a little bit of travel.
If you want to keep women within the system, we have to meet their needs.
Mahmood is pointing to another issue that's unusual about this moment. Women have dropped out of the workforce at twice the rate of men since the pandemic began.
We have to have women's labor force participation go up so that we can continue to grow as an economy.
This is the voice of William Spriggs. He's an economist for the AFL-CIO and a professor at Howard University. He says the U.S. once led the world in terms of women's workforce participation. Now we're ranked 6th among the world's 7 largest economies. And one reason, he says, is the U.S. hasn't made the same investments in the care economy.
We're at the moment where it should be clear to everyone that childcare, that paid sick leave, that care for the elderly are necessary for us to have a full recovery. The rest of the world learned these lessons long ago, that government needs to make certain investments to get women's labor force participation up.
And in the meantime, he says industries like, say, leisure and hospitality, well, they've lost workers to different jobs.
A lot of the workers they used to count on aren't available, and many women have successfully switched industries. The share of women in construction has been going up, as an example. The share of women in transportation and warehousing has been going up. And these are industries that traditionally were male-dominated. So it's a combination of women switching sectors and the effect of the pandemic keeping women at home.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you've learned about how employers are thinking about that? Meaning, are they offering different kinds of benefits for working parents, for women specifically in that position?
A lot of employers have not improved their job offers. Some employers have, but a lot have not. And a lot of firms don't have active personnel departments to really do the kind of outreach for the type and level of disruption that we've seen take place.
Okay, you heard that word, disruption? The tech world knows a lot about that.
How's everyone doing?
And the rock star of tech HR is one-time Google HR exec, Laszlo Bock.
Single most important thing is to make humans actually feel like human beings.
Okay, yeah, that sounds obvious, but Bock, using this ethos, now runs a company called Humu that consults with corporations big and small, trying to find and keep workers. And he says there's no longer a stigma to quitting and switching jobs. It's one of the many changes brought on by the pandemic.
You know, in the pandemic, people have talked a lot about essential workers. but we actually treat them as essential jobs. We treat the workers as quite replaceable. So that's the most important thing. Remember that all the people who are working for you are actually people and should be treated as such.
I want to talk a little bit about what people have been calling kind of public-facing service employers, whether that's grocery stores, whether that's fast food. This is the area where we're also seeing those help wanted signs. But are there things that they can do to make things better for their workers? Or rather, are there things they are prepared to do to make things better for their workers that they haven't in the past?
You have to be willing to actually listen to what their needs are. So, for example, hourly workers often get scheduled with a closing shift followed by an opening shift the next day. That's exhausting. That's a lot of extra work at the end of the day, and then you have to come in early to open. A simple thing is to not schedule those back to back. Hourly workers, often their employers have no idea whether they commute into work using just one means of transportation or more than one. If people are using more than one means of transportation, that's a signal that you need to be doing more for these folks. That's a hard commute and they're higher attrition risk than other workers. There's obviously living wages that need to be paid for workers. But the most important underpinning fundamental thing is to just ask these folks, how are things going? What else can we do for you? And then the final thing for these workers is so many of them face so much abuse from their customers. Not every day, not all the time, but they need to be supported in that.
So is this the end of the customer's always right?
I hope so, because a lot of customers are kind of crazy.
It just feels like you're blowing up a couple of ideas here. The customer is always right. You're saying maybe not. Lots of people could have more flexible schedules, and smarter and more humane scheduling in the service sector also could have been done. I mean, there's a lot here that has been revealed by the pandemic.
Absolutely. And I think what's different about this moment is we have this unifying kind of pandemic experience. So everyone's going through this globally at the same time, and everyone's kind of saying, we're suffering. There's got to be a better way. And we're suffering because our jobs actually make us sick, and people have options. So my hope is that there'll be a set of companies who say, wait a minute, we can actually operate in a very different way, and not just being distributed or remote or out of the office, but actually caring for our people in a different way. Because the business benefit is we're going to be more profitable and keep people around longer and be able to attract better people. And the human benefit is the human beings actually are healthier, enjoy what they're doing, which then also benefits the business at the end. So I think there's a real opportunity.
All right. I thought that was quite powerful. And the one thing that I wanted to say is, I know a lot of y'all, but I do have some new people on the True Royal family and also True Royal. I worked, what you would say, a non-traditional job when I was working. I'm a certified welder, and I'm retired now, and I have a disability retirement. And one thing that I noticed in my field was that, see, that was the only work I had ever done, which is unusual for a woman, but well over 99% of the women that came in the workforce that I worked in the construction field, they had worked in-house. That's the word I would use. And I would talk to those women, and they were treated quite shitty. Now, one of the common denominators that I seen was that the majority of women that I work with were sisters. There was just a handful of other races of women and stuff. And black women, that's the part that I have to add in. Black women, we already know, get the most shittiest jobs more than anybody on the damn planet. So construction was quite inviting because in the world of construction, you get paid every Friday. The money is damn good. So for someone who is not a college graduate, even though I did go to welding school and got certified, I was paid quite well. And my father worked in that field. He was a pipe fitter, so I had already knew that what kind of pay you would get, and I was always good with my hands. Many of y'all know that I'm dyslexic, so I always felt like I was not a good fit for college. I'm just being earnest with y'all. I didn't feel like I had what it took. I didn't do the greatest in school. Something that I rarely share it was like a light switch was cut on in my head one day when my last 3 years of high school. I literally made the honor roll. My last 3 years of high school. So, but I didn't have the confidence, you know what I'm saying? Because I often said I felt like something was done to me. But in my situation, being an unquote black woman, and at one time a single parent, I had a damn good job. And I had often said, I'm not trying to be a man. I'm just trying to make the money that a man make. Now, in the world of construction, women on an average might make it 5 years. I was, believe it or not, in the field for 17 years until I got hurt at work. It's some pretty tough work and stuff. So I wanted to add that, and it's been obvious, what's been going on in America. Childcare is an issue. It was an issue way before Rona it even hit. And I happen to be in a situation where I have to care for my granddaughter. And I had already prepared myself when my daughter was pregnant, and Rona hadn't even quite hit yet and stuff. And it is very essential because my daughter said they look just for the hell of looking. And I feel immensely humble and grateful that I am there for my family. And my grandmother was there for my mother's mother was there for me to care for my children, literally to drop them off at school. We all have to help each other. But also, let's go back to these jobs. See, these people, this is what I think that they think that's going to happen. They're trying to ride it out, think Rona just going to completely go away. America going to go back to business as usual, and they can just keep treating people that way. And it ain't happening that way. And now, employees have leverage, and they're gaining more momentum, and they're speaking on how they feel. If you have a company, it is more cost effective to pay folks well, treat folks well, find out, have a department where if there's some personal issues that people need to deal with, and you will have a better outcome. See, America was having this turnover rate. It was especially like the frontline workers. They didn't give a fuck. They figured like their attitude is like, though, because I have been it's been thrown in my face by a family member. Well, you and your husband, y'all nothing more than manual laborers. My husband, he worked over 35 years as a iron worker, but his specialty was to erect cranes. So people think when you work with your hands, you're just manual, so you can't think for yourself. So I put it to you like this: the very buildings that you go in, the very places that you live, you want to make damn sure that person know how to measure real good and all that. So is that a manual labor? See how people have these attitudes about people that work? They just look down on them. So we're going to see some great changes. And then it was really deep to hear that they seeing that women are very essential to the workforce, and to just, treat a woman horribly, and she got children and these big responsibilities and stuff like that. And they be knowing. They don't care. So I'm going to keep a close eye, like many of us is keeping a close eye and watching how this thing is going to evolve. And the government need pressure. We need full child care paid for, because you're bullshitting. Some of these countries overseas, they get it. This country, they don't want to get it. No, they don't want to get it. Even as I speak, they don't want to get it. Even though they so-called hearing what people saying, they are banking on that all of this will just simply go away. It ain't gonna go away. And the thing that gets me is, being chinchy and giving up chinchy benefits they getting the biggest tax write-off whatsoever. And you trying to hold on and hoard as much as you can. And it's affecting their immediate situation because folks got options. Because one thing that I love about what has happened with Rona, it is separating us from the enemy and is bringing the royal family back together. We need each other. And we need to continue to support each other and to help each other and to get along. That is it. And that is all at the end of the day. So my royal family, what I need you to do is to render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And it's always, my royal family, I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.